Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to tonight's free training, which these are trainings that we get around to doing here, every month or 6 weeks or so, and about different aspects of tax sale investing.
Yeah, just like Shay talked about. Tonight we're going to talk about Florida tax sale investing. With the Florida tax lien auctions coming up within the next week or so, it's really a good time to talk about Florida and kind of explain how Florida works, because they're a little bit different than any other state.
Well, and I think that it's also a really good state in terms of how they've always conducted their tax sales, and as a result of that, when people think of tax sale investing, or when they talk about it, a lot of times they're talking about it from the perspective of Florida, and how Florida state law handles it and how they operate is really unique to almost any other state in the country.
Yeah, in fact, on our YouTube channel, we get more questions about Florida and how Florida works than any other state. And so we figured, with the auctions coming up, tonight's a good night. We've talked about different topics over the last couple of months, from over-the-counter investing to online auctions, land, homes. And today would be a good day to talk about Florida.
Yeah. Now, if you're new to us, or if you don't know who we are, my name's Ferre. Of course, I'm with Swenson here. We're cousins. We've grown up around each other since we were, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something, pretty young age, and we've also been business partners as well. But we basically started with this over 20 years ago.
Yeah, I was a real estate agent. My broker invited me to come out to attend the tax sale, and that was the first that I had ever heard about it. Me and Shade had always had an interest in real estate. That was part of the reason I started as an agent. And so, we started at that time, around 99, 2000, to start investigating what is tax sale investing and how does it work.
Yeah, and we were also getting started, I think, at a good point in time, because the internet was also changing how a lot of things were going to be done and operated. But for us, though, ultimately, I don't think that we could find anything that would really help us understand. We were confused for a long time until we started attending auctions and started breaking down individual states.
Yeah, well, that was part of the problem, is all of the information out there was outdated information that was about, when you had to go down to the county courthouse in person to research records. And so, over the period of 5 or 6 years, we started attending auctions. We did everything we possibly could to learn about tax lien and deed investing, and started training other investors and teaching on it. And then around 2007 or so, we actually started working with a lot of the large seminar companies.
Yeah, so we did that for a while. We talked with and trained a lot of people, but eventually we wanted to get away from the seminar companies, because we wanted the freedom to be able to control our pricing and things like that, that was why we started taxsalesupport.com. It was basically a membership program where people could get good training without spending so much money on it, because it can be so expensive, and people have spent so much on it before.
Yeah, we took that program that the seminar companies were selling for a couple $1,000s in books and CD forms, and we just put it online and made it as just a monthly membership. And so that's kind of where we are at this point. We've been working with students through our membership programs, coaching, and seminars for the last 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
At least since we quit working with the seminars and just started doing it on our own.
Yeah. So which we really enjoy. We've been having a lot of fun with the coaching students and a lot of the success they've been having. But we can talk more about that if you guys have any questions about that. Let's start off here by talking about the Florida tax sale system and how it operates, so that people understand.
Yeah, well, what makes Florida unique is there's 2 types of sales. They have both tax lien sales and tax deed sales.
Yeah, in most states, state law will just utilize one vehicle pretty much for property tax enforcement, whether it's going to be a tax lien, or it's going to be a tax deed system, and the county's power to foreclose on the properties. But usually it's one or the other, or unless you get an odd state like Texas, or some, that kind of has their own system, and that's kind of what Florida is.
Yeah, Florida has both tax liens and tax deeds. So what we're going to do is we're going to describe and explain how both of these work and really how they kind of work together.
Yeah, so the first thing that's offered are tax liens in Florida. And the liens are sold by individual counties, and they're also sold once a year. So they're sold because of delinquent taxes that are owed, and those delinquent taxes generally represent a single year's worth of taxes. But they're sold with a 2-year redemption period attached to them. So when investors buy them, basically they have a 2-year window there where the investor won't be able to take action, but after 2 years, the lien can be used to foreclose on the property.
Yeah, now Florida has a maximum rate of return of 18%. So the bidding is going to start at 18% and will bid down depending on how aggressive or how much bidding is on that particular tax lien. Now, with these tax lien auctions, they're all held in the same month, and that's the month of May. So, but once May starts up, that's really when all of the counties are going to have their sales and pretty much be done by June 1st.
Yeah, well, there are some tax liens that you can maybe find to buy in Florida year round. They're not all good. The only tax liens that are really worth investing in Florida are the tax liens that are available for their sale, and shortly, right after this sale, there's a small amount of inventory that you can buy over the counter.
Yeah. The best place is always going to be at the auction, and then, like Shade said, right after the sale. Now, here's a couple of tax liens that were sold there in Florida, and these were some pretty good examples. You can see the tax lien on the right around $8,000, protected on a property valued at $479,000.
Well, and part of this is also about understanding the role of the tax lien and kind of how it works. Because these are great examples of that, but they're also not really about trying to acquire property at all. They're all about earning the interest rate return, which is a high rate of return, on the money, but at the same time, the money is also highly secured by the value of the real estate. So on the one, we've got a lien for $3,300 on the left, and the lien on the right was for $8,200. And in both cases, it's 1% of the property's value there at $315,000, and maybe 2% of the property's value at the $479,000. So a tiny fraction of what these properties are worth. Your money is so secure there, because it's always going to pay off.
Yeah.
Or nearly always, I guess you could say.
So why do investors buy Florida liens? Well, first of all, they offer a higher starting interest rate than a lot of states at 18%.
Yeah, the maximum interest rate also acts as kind of the default if you're able to buy the properties over the counter. So at 18%, that's pretty good. But there are other reasons, beyond that. Another thing about Florida that has always been nice is that they've always been at the forefront of offering tax liens, and making it easier for people to buy, having more online opportunities and sales, and really the overall simplicity. You can pretty much buy the liens in Florida, and most of the time, all you're going to have to do is wait and get a check in the mail.
Yeah, that's one thing that's nice is the foreclosure is handled by the county, and that's something that's a little bit different. In some states, when the redemption period comes to an end, then you're going to go ahead and get an attorney, and they're going to do the foreclosure. But that's not the case in Florida.
Yeah, in fact, whether or not foreclosing on tax liens is the responsibility of the county, or whether it's the responsibility of the lien holder, is something that differentiates different states, and can change how you might approach things. So for instance, in Arizona, the investor is responsible for foreclosing on the property, and so they have to hire an attorney to kind of to help them foreclose on the property. But in Florida, the lien holder doesn't have to do that. In fact, really all the lien holder needs to do in Florida is simply fill out a form with the county after that time period has expired.
Yeah, exactly. After 2 years, what can happen is the lien holder can fill out what's called a deed application. They'll do this deed application with the county. They'll pay a deed application fee. And at that point, the county clerk is going to foreclose on the property. So with tax liens, they're going to be handled by the tax collector, But for tax deeds, they're handled by the clerk of court.
Yeah, so the clerk of the court will then schedule the properties for an auction, and many of these are online auctions where they will be offered up to bidders, and they'll be sold to the highest bidder. So they take the proceeds from that and use that money to pay off the various lien holders that existed, including if you're a tax lien holder, they're going to pay off of that.
Yeah, and with these tax deed auctions, unlike the lien sales that are all held in May, tax deed auctions can be held throughout the year. It's just whenever somebody is foreclosing on the property.
Yeah.
So some counties will have auctions every single month, sometimes even more than one auction a month, because they have many people that are doing the foreclosure on the property and sending it to the deed sale. Now, one thing that makes Florida unique is when the investor buys the tax deed. So if you were to buy one of these tax deed properties, then when you pay that, it's going to go ahead and pay off the lien holders. So that's the reason why in Florida, you're not going to have a very good chance of getting property through tax lien certificates, because chances are it's going to go, it's going to get sold. If it's a good property, it's going to get sold at the foreclosure sale, which in turn is going to pay off all of the lien holders.
Yeah, well, that's what's important for investors, lien investors, to understand in Florida, is that you're not going to end up with the property in almost any case, because when even if it doesn't end up redeeming, and you push it to go to auction, if it's anything of value, it's most likely going to sell at auction. So what will end up happening there is it will end up redeeming, so you'll get a check in the mail once again. The only way the lien holder will end up with that property is if it doesn't get a minimum bid. And in which case, then the lien holder ends up with it. But that oftentimes, the properties that don't get bids are oftentimes junk.
Yeah, yeah.
Florida's a fairly competitive market, and so that's what we tend to see. But here are a couple of tax deed examples here in Florida.
Yeah, in fact, these are some properties that we were able to pick up in a tax deed online auction. You can see the top property has a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, had a value of $52,000. We ended up picking up for $10,000.
Yeah, and in the other property, you can see there it has a value of about $85,000, and we picked it up there for about $20,000. It's one of the nice things about Florida is that these properties had pretty good monthly rent capabilities for their value. Higher than we could do, maybe further than money could go in other states where maybe to get the similar thing would cost 2 or 3 times as much.
And in fact, that property there on the bottom, we've had that for nearly 4 years, so it's actually coming up on the point where it's going to be very easy to get clear title and essentially get a warranty deed on it.
Yeah, which is essentially what you're going to do. If the property has any real value, you're going to want to take the property through that process to get quiet title on it, to get a warranty deed. But if we're asking why do investors buy Florida tax deeds in general are hands down the cheapest way to acquire property. You can't control what kinds of property are offered that way, but when it's offered, it's hands down the cheapest way to buy it.
Yeah, well, and with the Florida tax deeds, a lot of times they're going to start around 10% of the assessed value. That's not always the case. There's exceptions to that, but generally, if it was a good tax lien and they didn't let the tax lien go for 7 years, it's going to be around 10% of the value. Now, with tax deeds, you're not buying a lien on the property. You own the property outright.
Yeah, so if you're buying a property, like let's say it's a home, one of these homes through one of the tax deed sales. What has happened up to that point is there were liens issued against the property and they didn't redeem, and so the lien holder they filled out an application. They applied for a deed, and when that happened, the county began to foreclose on the property. So one of the questions we have from one of you is, are these properties vacant? Are they bought unseen? And in fact, what leads up to the circumstances on why these properties end up in the sale is part of the challenge with tax sale investing. We don't really know a lot of times what the circumstances are leading into it. Sometimes those properties could still be occupied. Maybe somebody's still living in them. Maybe it's vacant. We really don't know. It can be all different situations, but a lot of times it can be odd circumstances.
Yeah, well, and when it comes down to structured properties, we never buy them sight unseen. We at least have somebody go out and take current photos of the property, because we can't trust, what is online. Now, when it comes to land, we have bought lots of land without ever, sending somebody out there to look at the property. But when it comes to tax deeds and homes or structured property, we're always going to get a current view of the property before deciding how much we're going to pay for it. Because the one thing about tax deeds, and we actually get a lot into this and train our memberships on this a lot, is, with tax deeds, we can only see, what is on the outside. We're really judging a book by the cover, so we can't see what the condition is inside in most of these properties. So in that type of scenario, we need to really judge how the value of the property based on the outside of the property.
Yeah, whether it's occupied or not, you're probably not going to be able to gain access to the inside of the property, period. At no point are you probably going to be given keys to the property. That just doesn't really happen with a foreclosure like this. It's the kind of situation where you send over a locksmith after you buy it to switch out the locks. And so there are lots of different circumstances that can lead up to this, but you're not going to be able to get inside. It's not that kind of a real estate transaction, and that's important to understand, because you don't have some of the same privileges that you might have real estate investing, using other buying methods, where you can have more access to the property. One of the questions here is how you get pictures of occupied property when, and really when it comes to occupied properties, we're really just trying to get exterior pictures anyway.
Yeah.
That's all we can really get. What we're trying to get at least detailed and enough exterior pictures to be able to see and glean what we can about the property from it.
Yeah. So as far as tax liens and the tax lien auctions, they're all going to be happening here pretty quickly now. About 80% of the tax lien auctions are going to be held online. So a lot of the counties are having their auctions online, and that gives us the opportunity to bid on them from anywhere.
Yeah, that is, and that's also happening right now. The Florida tax liens are available starting between May 1st to June 1st. It's basically starting out right now, and for between the month of May, maybe the next 45 to 60 days is when, if you're going to buy any tax liens in Florida, it will need to happen. Now, one of the questions too is to use a real estate agent to find out more about the property. And honestly, not a lot. We don't generally need a real estate agent to find out about the property, because that's usually what we're trying to figure out from the photos. Everything else aside from the images, we can determine online.
Yeah. So as far as these online auctions, with the virus, that hasn't affected the tax lien sales. So at this point, all of the counties in Florida that are having online auctions are still scheduled and are still scheduled to take place.
Yeah, and so we'll see it. What we're hoping for, though, is with some of the chaos that has happened, plus a huge amount of money that has been lost. Right now there are a lot of unemployed people. There's been a lot of money that was lost just in the crash of the market. There are a lot of different reasons why there might be less competition now than there would be at other times, and so this could be a great year to be involved in some of these auctions, especially the early ones.
Yeah. So as far as the Florida online auction providers, there's three primary providers. There's Real Auction, Grant Street Group, and then Tax Certificate Sale. And we're going to go through and kind of show you how to get registered for each one of them.
Yeah, which each company is each company provides for many of the counties here, but getting set up here on these these companies pretty much going to be the same with all of them. One of them is Real Auction. I don't know if they've got 15 or 20 counties maybe that they offer, maybe a little less. But it's a familiar format because it's the same format that they use in both their lien sales and deed sales.
Yeah. So what you're going to do is you're just going to click on register, and you're going to go ahead and get registered for the account. Now, one thing about all of these different websites that we're going to talk about is that you're going to use the same username and password for each one of the websites. So when you set up an account, you're going to be able to use that username and password for each one of the websites, but you're going to have to register for each one of the individual auctions.
Yeah, so you're going to have to register with each individual county, essentially when there's an auction, or at least for that auction, even though you're already registered for the overall, real auction.
Yeah. Here's Grant Street Group. This is another one of the online auction providers that have quite a few of the different tax lien sales.
Yeah, and what we're going to do is we're actually just kind of showing you this stuff, and then we're going to we're actually going to go and look at some of these tax liens that are available. There are some that we can see right now, and many that are opening up on the 1st, and so we're going to have the chance to kind of look at some different liens.
Yeah. So to create an account, what we do is we'll just go to the sign in. We'll click on the sign in, and then it's going to give you a place to sign in, and then below that is where you're going to be able to click a user to create an account.
Yeah, one of the I don't know if I would say newer, but it representing smaller counties, and I don't think it's been around before, is Tax Cert Sale.
Well, they had a different name, but the same thing. They've been around for a few years now, but they've definitely been adding more counties.
That's right. It used to be FL Tax Sales.
Yeah.
That was what it was. So, but now it's taxcertsale.com, and this actually kind of show you here. Signing up on the service is pretty easy. You can do right up there. You can see where it's pointed to in the sign up feature here, and we'll get a chance. They provide for a number of counties, at least 10, I would say, and they're a lot of smaller counties.
Yeah. So again, let's say I was to go ahead and create a account on tax certificate sale, and my account name was Stephen J. Well, at that point, if I wanted to participate in more than one auction, so I wanted to do Bradford and Polk County, I would go ahead and use that same username, but I would need to register for each one of those sales individually.
Yeah, this is just a success story from one of our coaching students that bought some liens and had good experience with it. They're just saying here essentially that they bought a lien for $4,300. And that when it redeemed, they got a check in the mail for $4,750, a profit basically of $450, and it's just about how easy it was. And that's what's attractive about tax liens, is just how little it is that you really have to do most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time you're just collecting a check in the mail, and that's really it.
Well, that's really the case with Florida. They're really one of the easiest to participate in the sale. So once you've got your username, then we're going to go ahead and get registered for the sale. So we're going to go ahead and just log in using your username and password, and this is where there's going to be work. Now you're going to need to do this with every single county that you want to participate in the auction with.
Yeah, which a couple of things you're going to have to take care of with each individual auction. And that's going to be your bidder agreement, a W-9 form, as well as a deposit that you're going to need to get placed. And they're all going to be requirements here for bidding. And so, the deposit is probably the most important one because it's always time sensitive.
Yeah, and you're going to need to add your bank account information. Now, one thing that's nice about some of these auctions is that you can continue to add money up until near the end of the auction. So with this auction, we can see that the last day to register to pay a deposit is 5/28, May 28th. And that's near the end of the auction. So the auction probably ends on 5:30 or something.
Yeah, so in other words, if you were bidding in it and you decided, you wanted to try to get more, you have the time to add some more funds to your deposit.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, the way that deposit works is in a lot of cases, again, it can vary with individual providers, but normally you're going to be responsible for providing a deposit that's about 10% of what you intend to spend on tax lien certificates.
Yeah, that's pretty standard. I mean, that's even, even with real auction tax deeds, that's pretty similar to what to do with the tax deed auctions. So
it's also your limiting factor too.
Yeah, and so that, and that's one thing that's going to come into play. So if you say you want to buy $1,000 worth of lien, so you put in $100 deposit, and you started, you tried to buy a $1,100 lien, it's not going to let you buy it. It's going to only let you bid or buy lien. So you could buy a $500 lien and a $495 lien, and use your deposit. But if you try to buy, a $500 lien and a $600 lien, it wouldn't work.
Yeah. So that's why they give you some flexibility there on the ability to increase what you have in the deposit. So you're going to do that kind of based on how much you want to invest.
Yeah, and one thing that's going to be important is, are you putting these tax liens in your personal name, or are you putting them within your business name? Because depending on how you do that, that's how you're going to want to set up and register with these auctions, because that's what they're going to put the tax lien certificate into. That's the name they're going to use.
Yeah, and you don't want to try to have to change it to something after they issue it. That is way too much work and way too much.
You could do it, but it's going to be a pain. So it's just better to have it, done the right way now, and then go ahead and, either putting in your social security number or, your tax ID number.
Yeah. Now, if there are counties, one of the questions here was what about counties that have no deposit or a $1 deposit requirement? Most all of the online ones are going to require. In fact, that's kind of how they set up your account. Is your ability to bid is connected to how much you have, in as a deposit, and so. But there are different auctions, there are different ones where, that you don't have to do it. Some live auctions, you don't have to do that. And so, if you don't have to, that's great. Another question here is, do most students use an LLC or their Social Security? So there are a lot of advantages. You're basically starting up a business when you
could do it either way, though. It's all going to depend on how much investment. I mean, if you're not going to you don't need to set up a business if you're just doing a $500 lien and you're trying to go through the experience. Now, if you're investing $50,000 worth of liens, or as you start getting into more of tax deed investments, I mean, when we started, we bought our first investments in our names, and as our need grew, so did the need for a business.
Oh yeah, and if you do have an LLC, yeah, sure, it's a good idea to use it. Yeah, definitely. And so now, the bidder agreement is something else you're going to need to make sure that you fill out, and essentially just you're going to be promising to pay for the things there that that you're bidding on, but you're also going to be agreeing to some things.
Yeah, you're also going to have to go through and check off a bunch of boxes. Now, unless you're dishonest, a lot of them have to do with not trying to rig the auction or work with other bidders and just some of the basic stuff that you're going to go through.
Yeah, and a land trust, by the way, somebody mentioned I use a trust. A land trust would be is a great way to do it too. So if you don't have to put them, a land trust would be a great way to go as well. But yeah, you need to fill out all of these different check boxes, though, which are all things. I will not engage in any bidding strategy that will result in a rotational award of tax certificates. I will not, engage or not employ any bidding strategy. I mean, it's all about things that are related to the bidding strategy, and so they don't have people cheating, which happens all the time.
Yeah. So what we'll go ahead and do is sign the bidder agreement and go ahead and sign and accept it, and then at that point, it'll be done. We can go ahead and start placing bids.
And by the way, land trust, I don't know if I'm great here with describing it, so we'll have to cover it later here. Now, right after this, we can actually get to the part where we can see the different kinds of property that we have. So we've got the list, and we can see the unpaid balance on the liens. We can see, other information about the properties.
Yeah. You know, one question we get a lot is, what is proxy bidding? And, you know, proxy bidding is going to allow you to pre-enter your minimum interest rates and the amount that you're willing to accept, the lowest amount you're willing to accept.
All right, so when it comes to different strategies that you can employ here, you know, most of the times the online deposit's not going to be a large enough amount. You know, 10% is not that much. Beyond that, if you don't spend it, you always get that money refunded to you. So you're never at risk of losing any money. You know, other than having some money tied up, it's really not a problem. And it's a good idea to get engaged in a number of auctions because it's a numbers game. And you're only going to have the ability to win properties if you're getting registered for auctions and bidding on them.
Yeah, Shay makes a good point. You know, the more properties you're able to do bids on, the more chances you're going to get. And one thing as well is you're not going to be at any risk of overspending because you can only spend up to whatever your deposit amount is.
Yeah, so it's easy not to, now instead of overspending, what people do sometimes is they'll bid properties down to too low of an interest rate. You know, and you can do that, but that's all a matter of control and deciding to set a limit on what you want that lowest interest rate to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, one thing that me and Shade like to do is we like to look at other types of properties that people may overlook. So if we're looking at a $100,000 piece of land and a $100,000 home, and one of the home bids down to 6%, and we can get the $100,000 piece of land at 17%, we're always going to buy the land.
Yeah,
or buy the tax lien on the land.
When we're buying tax liens, the property itself is less important. You know, it doesn't really matter because, again, we're not buying the property itself. We're just buying a lien against the property, and the vast majority of these, 95+% of these, are just going to redeem. It's not something where we're looking at the property as something that we're investing in, and that's why, if we're looking at different properties, there are advantages to looking at something like the land over, let's say, something like the house, because people have a natural tendency, even with the tax liens, to target things like the nice single-family homes, and because of that, they might get bid down to a much lower interest rate. Or be more competitive than other pieces of property that might be just as valuable but have less interest.
Yeah, that's a good point. Here are some tax lien examples, and what we'll generally do is right after the sale, both the online sale, but also especially the ones that aren't online, that are still having live sales, is we'll go and pick up the over-the-counter as soon as that list comes out. And here's some examples of some of those over-the-counters that our students were able to get directly after the sale had taken place, soon as that over-the-counter list was available.
Yeah, these are all great examples of tax liens, and they're good examples because the lien amounts are such a tiny fraction of what the properties are valued to be worth, and they're obviously all very useful properties too. So they all have a very high likelihood or tendency to redeem, which is exactly what you want tax liens to do. In fact, when you're picking out good liens, what you're trying to pick out are properties that are desirable, that people want to maintain and keep, because that means they're going to pay their delinquent property taxes off, even if it's delinquent.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you can always get your deposit back. You just may need to request it because the county may hold it until you request it, but then it's usually less than 4 weeks, I think, before you can get it.
Yeah. Once you start buying tax liens, really what's going to happen is you're just going to start getting checks in the mail.
Yeah, that's the beauty of tax liens, and that's how they work. This is why banks and big financial institutions just love tax liens, and especially in the years past, before the internet, they could just go in there and spend hundreds of millions on liens in one county. They love it because they can just sit back and get checks that are with great interest rate returns, and they don't have to do anything for it. That's what happens, the vast majority of the time with the liens, because they end up redeeming. People are just late with their property taxes, but they eventually end up paying them off. But if they don't, and the redemption period expires, in Florida, then the property can be lost, but it doesn't mean the lien holder is going to end up acquiring it.
Yeah, so, when it comes to tax liens, if you're looking for interest rate, that's where it's at. But if you're looking for property, tax deeds is really the only way, or, kind of the only way you're going to acquire property. The only way you would get a lien is if you foreclosed on a lien and it went to the auction and didn't sell. And usually if the property doesn't sell at the tax deed auction, it means it wasn't worth buying.
Yeah. So if property is your objective and that's what you want in Florida, then you're gonna want to target those properties through the tax deed auctions, that are occurring, and not try to go through liens. There are certain states in the country where you can use liens and purchase liens and result in more property acquisition opportunities, but not in Florida.
Yeah.
So another nice thing I think about Florida though is they've got a lot of good online systems. All of their systems, you can do easier research in Florida than probably almost any state in the country.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, with Florida, all of their online records, a lot of the counties have their online records available. And one thing about tax deed investing, and we talk about this when we talk about tax deeds in some of our other webinars and trainings, is that, we need to research the property for other governmental liens. Now, when it goes through that foreclosure process, it's going to eliminate, judgments and mortgages and things like that. But if there's like a grass cut lien from the city, it's not going to erase that. And, if there's something like that, we need to research that. And Shade brings up that point, is that Florida is one of the best states that has those records available online, easy to research.
Yeah. And also, hey, if that property does get foreclosed on, while it may not get rid of something like, a government issued lien, like a nuisance lien, it's pretty much going to extinguish any other kind of lien or claim associated with the property. The judicial foreclosure that happens when properties are foreclosed on because of delinquent taxes is a powerful foreclosure that has to have the power to wipe out and extinguish claims. Otherwise, foreclosure would have no meaning.
Yeah. So when it comes to the online Florida auctions, the tax deed auctions, there's two companies that do it, Real Auction and Grand Street Group, and they're both of these companies also do tax lien sales in Florida as well.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to jump over and take a look at some properties. Some tax liens and online auctions that are happening directly.
Yeah, we could look at some Florida tax lien auctions, and then if we have time, we could check out a Florida tax deed auction too. Whenever we're going to go to any of the online auctions, we'll just use our membership program on Tax Sale Support, go to the online auction tab, and then at that point we can click on the tax lien, tax deeds, but we're going to click on tax liens, and we'll scroll down. Now, one thing about Florida right now is that we're a couple of days off from a good portion of the counties having their lists available online. So there's really only one county right now, I think one starting tomorrow, that we can actually do research, but that's going to be in Lee County. But that's okay, because we can at least show you it, and then we could also at least show you the websites as well if we needed to.
Yeah. So a lot of these are just about ready to open. Polk County there is going to open up tomorrow. Let's see, Broward just opened up today. Let's see if Broward opened up. Broward is opened up now. Okay, so this one is now opened up. We can see, the dates along with a lot of these. Citrus is going to open up, and they're all happening here over the next few weeks. And so yeah, we can see, a couple of these. We have Lee and Broward both, and they are with, they're really. I'll show you different systems here.
Yeah, and also once you've logged into it, then you're going to have more search features than there is right here. So you can actually search, by lien amount, and there's going to be more search features once you actually log into the website. But we can go ahead and start looking at any of these tax liens. One thing sometimes we like to do is, is search them by face amount. Makes it a little bit easier as we're showing you here, because you can kind of start looking at them by price. So if you wanted to go down into a lower price or a higher price, we could just go up to the top near the page number and
so if we want, we could we can click here and basically just go ahead and click OK on that. And to see, because this is the most expensive one, let's just see what it is. It's a $263,000 tax lien. And let's take a look here at it. It is, all right, this one is a retirement home. And we can see the overhead image of the property here. They actually have some images of the property here. It has 140 bedrooms, there 140 units, or about 97,000 square feet, built in 2017. So pretty new, and the value on it is substantial. They're valuing it at estimating it at 17,200.
Yeah.
So, and oh, by the way, these liens have a 2-year redemption period. Okay, so if you were to purchase these, the redemption period on them is 2 years.
Yeah, so 2 years from the day, then you could go ahead and fill out that deed application, and it would send it to the auction. Now, one thing that one of the biggest risks with tax lien investing in Florida is what we call roll up. And these are going to be extra years of tax liens on the property. And if there's 5 or 6 years worth of back taxes on a tax lien, that's going to be a huge red flag, because somebody has been sitting on their lien for 4 or 5 years, or 3 or 4 years after, when they could have started the foreclosure process.
And this also refers to back years taxes, or when you're looking at the tax year here. Okay, so we mentioned that it's hard to find good tax liens outside of of this time period when they're available, and that's because most of the good stuff has been picked up. And as a result of that, what you'll also find is generally your older liens that for previous tax years that are still available tend to be against properties that have a whole lot of other liens placed against them. It's kind of become a problem in specifically Florida because they'll allow about 7 years worth of taxes to accumulate total.
Yeah.
After
7 years, if the lien holder hasn't foreclosed on their tax lien, they're going to lose their investment. So after that 7 years, the tax lien drops off.
Yeah, it basically it becomes invalid after 7 years, but you can have up to 7 years worth of delinquent taxes, and all of those liens can be actively earning 18%, and can cause the properties to be upside down very quickly. And that's what the problem is with a lot of the Florida properties that they have, or at least the older Florida liens, is that you might find a lien, and you'll look at the property value, and it just is not reflective of what the property value is. In other words, you might be looking at a lien that is 50% of the property value, or maybe the lien is more than the property value. Roll up is something that we always check, because the reason for that is actually it comes down to foreclosing on tax liens. If you want to foreclose on one of these liens, the county's only going to have one requirement, and that is the property taxes have to be current in order for you to foreclose.
Yeah.
And so when you pay, when you by paying off those amounts, the county will begin foreclosing on the property. And but again, and before that though, the liens against the property are going to prevent the property from being from the transfer of ownership anyway. And so when you have this tax lien, you want to begin foreclosing on the property, that roll-up amount is going to be a requirement in terms of, that's what you're going to need to pay in order to foreclose on the property.
Yeah.
It's going to be the roll-up amount. And so how do we check the roll-up amount, and how do we know if there's roll-up? Well, first off, the first thing I guess we're going to be looking at is to see if this is a first-year tax lien or not on the property. That's one of the first things we're trying to determine as we look at stuff. So
It's really not that hard in Florida, because even if you start looking at the records, a lot of them are going to have links that go back to the tax records. So, it's pretty easy to do. We could probably look at any of these tax properties and see that they don't, or maybe they have one or two. But if it's a good property, chances are it doesn't have a huge roll up, because usually the ones that have roll up are going to be your problem properties.
Yeah. Now there's a couple ways that we can do it though. So
there's the tax bill right up there.
Yeah. If there's going to be roll up on the property, we're talking about other delinquent taxes that are owed on the property. This is going to be something that the tax collector or the treasurer is going to have, or that we can locate in the tax bill. So if we go to click on the tax bill up here in the corner, it's actually going to pull up the tax record on this property. And what it's going to do is it's going to tell us exactly what is outstanding and what's owed, and we can see what's happened here in previous years. So this particular property, we can see that for these past years, we can see that paid.
First year lien.
Yeah, so this is a first year lien. We can see this 2019 lien.
Yeah, because we can see it's the tax year 2019 and it's being sold in 2020. Yeah. So that's this year's delinquent taxes. First year lien. So this type of tax lien was probably going to, if I would guess, pay off within the first year.
Yeah, definitely. These are good first year liens, that are most likely just
going to redeem within that first year.
This one's just a condo, but we're going to probably be able to find this with almost all of these, or at least a lot of them. Let's see.
That's
so yeah, this is a service station, and let's see.
Oh, it looks like almost like you can see like car wash.
Yeah, let's see what the tax bill looks like on it. Yep, this one's another first year lien, so we can see all the property taxes.
Notice that though. Notice there was a change in business in 2018. So they had Mean Bubbles LLC that owned the company up to 2017, and then there was a new owner starting in 2018, and they paid the very first year that they bought, which they probably would have paid when they bought the property, and this is their first year being delinquent.
Yeah. Now, sometimes if we're looking at this part of one of these sales here, on some of the auctions that we're looking at, online auctions, there'll be multiple links that will work. We can click on this link like we've been doing, but there will also be a link sometimes here or sometimes here. And if we click on that, what it will do is it will give us a little preview window. And that preview window will tell us how many previous liens there are against the property, or if there are previous liens against the property or not.
Yeah.
And so, and some of those we can click on the additional links, but, on these ones, we can click on each of these and they're all going to look amazing. This is a single family house here valued at $415,000. And
now, as you're going through these lists, let's say that we find just a really nice commercial piece of land that has the same type of value, and we're looking at this home and that other home. We always look at this like an investment. So, we don't care what the property is. We don't care if it's, land or structure or commercial. It doesn't matter to us. It's what is the property valued versus the amount of the lien. And so if we can get a higher interest rate on the land versus the home, we're going to choose the land.
Felicia has a really good question here. She's wondering, what happens if I purchase, the lien the first year, and while waiting the second year, it's not paid? Do I need to purchase that second year also? That's a great question. And
yeah, in some states they'll have you pay the roll up, but in Florida they just offer up the lien again.
Yeah, so basically the answer to that is you can buy the second lien if you want to, and yeah, in a lot of cases counties will try to offer it to you, to that person first, to the lien holder, but you don't actually have to buy it though, because your lien, you basically have purchased your lien a full year ahead of that second lien holder. And so what will happen is your redemption period is going to expire a full year ahead, and that's when you can initiate the foreclosure process.
Yeah, and one thing to bring up is that when you do, because you have that first position lien, when you do the foreclosure, you're actually going to pay off any other liens that are on the property. Yep. So if you have the lien from 2020, and let's say somebody else bought that 2021, when you go to pay up to do the deed application, you're going to pay off their lien and pay them their interest. So let's say that they were making 10% interest because they bid down to 10%. Then you would pay them their money and their 10% interest. And then at that point, you would go ahead and do the deed application. Now, one benefit of this is that when you go ahead and pay off their taxes, and you're going to start earning 18% on that money until the property is sold at the foreclosure sale. So let's say it's 3 months, and during that 3 months, you're going to be earning 18% off of that money versus maybe a lower interest rate that you would bid down on your lien.
You know, it's really pretty simple. You know, when you go to foreclose on the property, the county's going to say, sorry, there's X amount owed in delinquent taxes still. And essentially you would have to pay off that amount in order to foreclose on the property. But what's actually happening though, on that, and by the way, yeah, you'll get the full 18%, especially if it's that kind of money, you know, that you're paying out at that point to foreclose on. You'll make the maximum rate of return, I believe, on that stuff. You know, I'm pretty sure that once you're paying that. But yeah, essentially what's happening though is when they receive that money, they're using it to pay off the other lien holders. So whether you bought that lien, if you did buy it, then what would happen is the county would say, you know, when you go to foreclose, the county would say, well, yes, you know, there is, you know, looks like 2019 lien, you know, is still there. But if you're the 2019 lien holder, then you don't have to pay that because, you know, you just be paying yourself off basically. You know, so you can buy it if you want, and it doesn't hurt at all. But you don't have to buy it. You know, it's not going to limit your investment or hurt the investment anyway.
No, and once you buy their lien, you're going to be paying their interest. But it doesn't really make any difference to us because, you know, we're going to be making money off of that point, off of their investment. So if we have that 2020 lien and they have a 2021 lien, we'll go ahead and pay that off. But once we paid that off, we're going to start earning 18% on paying the money that we paid off until the auction takes place.
Yeah, but remember with these liens that if these liens go past the redemption period, we're not going to end up getting them even if we foreclose on them. Really, what that's going to do is when we fill out a deed application with the county, it's just sending these properties to tax deed auction where they're going to be sold to the people. And when they're sold, the opening bid amount is going to be, you know, a total amount that's owed to pay everybody off, all the lien holders. So if it reaches the minimum bid, everybody's getting paid off. And if it bids up, you know, beyond that, then they'll have additional money, you know, to possibly pay off additional debts with it. You know, so you know, you're not going to end up with the property in Florida because it's going to end up getting sold at the tax deed auction. What's going to end up happening is you're going to end up getting a check in the mail for all of it plus your rate of return.
Yeah, you know, that's the reason we say if you got the property in Florida through a lien, then you weren't purchasing very good liens. That's a bad thing because that means that you bought a tax lien or you foreclosed on a property that didn't have enough value, that nobody there at the auction thought it was valuable enough to buy. And so, you know, that's maybe something you can go through and look at some of the over-the-counter tax liens that are on the list right now, and there'll be liens that, you know, have $10,000 worth of back taxes on 7 different tax liens.
Oh yeah, you can see them. They're ugly.
Yeah, and maybe the property is only worth 10 grand. So, you know, nobody's ever going to, you know, buy this property because it has $10,000 worth of back taxes. And that's the reason why if there was any lien holders that bought that tax lien, they don't end up doing the foreclosure either because it just doesn't make financial sense. That's what we talk about toxic liens. We kind of train our members about how to avoid it.
Well, and I think that the institutional bidders are one of the things that caused you know, some of the issues there with all of these properties and all the roll up. And it's because, you know, they would get these big financial institutions that would buy up all these liens, but they have no interest in the foreclosure process. And so they would just basically sit back and get checks in the mail, but they would never actually, you know, try to initiate foreclosure.
Yeah, they would have huge groups of people that would go out and participate in the auctions, but they didn't have people working those liens and foreclosing them, you know, within a good time frame. You always want to foreclose as soon as you possibly can. And the reason is because the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost you to foreclose, because your lien and every other lien that's on the property is going to be earning interest. And so, you know, if you go ahead and wait, you know, 4 years, another 2 years after your 2-year redemption period in Florida and do the foreclosure, it's going to cost twice as much, probably 3 times or 4 times as much, including the interest, for you to do the foreclosure, you know, 2 years later than doing it right at that 2-year mark. Doing it in 4 years versus doing it in 2 years.
Yeah, you're just going to have additional taxes to pay, and they're just constantly going up. So it's always advantageous to pursue foreclosure as quickly as possible, you know, which would be right after, you know, the lien redemption period, you know, expires. Here's another one that we're looking at. This was just a nice little house here, $3,000 lien. We can see here, I clicked on the tax bill again so we can show you just how we look at that roll up, and we can see these are first year liens.
Yeah, you know, that's the one thing that's nice about Florida, is it's so easy. The records are easy, the searches are easy, at least comparable to a lot of other counties and states.
Yeah, and by the way, you're going to earn that full 18% interest rate. You know, you're going to earn that when the property pays off. You know, when it's sold through the tax deed auction. And so, yeah, the county will pay
on the
you
roll up.
interest.
You will. You're going to earn it depending on what you've been earning. Like if you bid it down to 10%. You'll earn 10% on that tax lien until you do the foreclosure, and then you would earn 18% on it. So you're going to earn 10% until you do the foreclosure, then 18%. If you bid it down to 10% or 17%, there's going to be some bidding involved unless you just bought it over the counter or you got it for 18% at the auction.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, by the way, Jennifer, so yeah, 2-year redemption period, so you wouldn't be able to foreclose. If you bought it in 2020, you wouldn't be able to start foreclosure until after 2022.
Yeah, you'd be able to do it in, you know, let's say the auction was on May 25th, you could do it May 25th, 2022.
Yeah, here's kind of an interesting question here. What happened if the owner doesn't pay off the tax lien but file for bankruptcy instead? Great question, because actually, you know, it can happen rarely or occasionally. You know, it can happen where the property taxes can be included in a bankruptcy. And if you happen to buy a tax lien on a property that is included in a bankruptcy, you know, in fact, originally this was like one of my #1 concerns when we were getting started, because I was thinking, if they're not paying their bills, you know, how can this not be? And I thought this was going to be the big issue. But what it really comes down to is if somebody manages to get their property taxes included in a bankruptcy, all it's going to do, you're still going to get your money back, and you may even get back some interest. You know, but you know, you may also just get it back without your interest.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know, it's not as common where the bankruptcy is going to be, where the property is going to be part of the bankruptcy, because otherwise there's going to be a mortgage, or they're going to be selling the property as part of the bankruptcy, which in turn pays off the property taxes. So it's rare that the tax lien actually gets into the bankruptcy, but when it does happen, like Shade said, I mean, I had it happen to us, you know, and what happened is we just ended up getting payments. So, you know, we got $100, let's say it was a $1,200 lien. We got, you know, $200 checks, you know, every month, you know, for a period of time until it was paid.
Yeah. You know, now here's an interesting property. I was noticing this was, not that one. This one right here was just a piece of land, valued at $21,000. It said, you know, it's like with the lien that was about $4,000.
Yeah, that's kind of a red flag, you know, to begin with, because why is there $4,000 worth of back taxes on a property where the taxes should be? In fact, when you click on the taxes, what does it say?
All right, hold on. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right one here. Let me pull it up again. So we can see here that it is a first-year lien here, but there was another lien that was issued that redeemed in 2018. You know, we can see that right here. You know, that instead of just saying paid, it says, you know, redeemed. Yeah,
And
but
that's such a high, I wonder what's going on with that. What that owner needs to do is he needs to petition and get it dropped.
yeah.
But what it does show also is that even though it is it's only worth 24,000 or whatever as far as the assessed value, the owner, likes it enough for whatever reason to continue to pay the property taxes.
Yeah, they're still paying it off every single year. But yeah, their property taxes are probably not fair at all. Considering, the property, here's one, valued at 227,000. It's like around that same dollar amount. It's like another single family house, beautiful here. Let's see, and another.
Oh, look at that! They had TDR, tax deed.
Yeah, tax deed. Let's see, the TDR here is tax deed application redeemed.
Yeah, they did.
So that means that the redemption period expired and somebody filled out an application to foreclose on it, and then
it paid off.
Then it paid off.
So this is one of those tax liens that just continue to go through the cycle. And so you'll buy a tax lien, they'll wait a while, they'll pay it off, and they'll just continue to do that.
Yeah, they're kind of interesting.
But looking through the history, you can kind of see where they had been delinquent, then they paid it off, got it, before it went to auction. Now they're starting to become delinquent again. But they only, how many years were they? I think they'd only had those, they'd paid up to this year or last year.
Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, see, that one has one back in 2019. Oh, wait, no, that's flipped around.
I don't know why they've got the dates all weird on that.
Yeah, that is weird.
They've kind of got the dates all messed up here with the way they're showing it anyway. But even looking at it with the messed up dates, it looks like everything's been paid except for the 1 year.
Yeah.
Just 2019. And so again, it's a 1 year, it's a 1 year. Yeah, in fact, yeah, if
have any other questions before we go?
Yeah, I think, we have tried to answer a lot of different questions here. And when you look at junk liens, it becomes pretty obvious, when you're looking at the records like that, you can see all the other, all the other old liens that exist there. You can also see here, this is just a different system that, but again, basically the same thing.
Well, and we don't have a crystal ball, so who really knows what's going to happen when it comes to these auctions? But we at least think that this may be one of the better years to get better returns. It's gotten pretty competitive. In fact, last year it was so competitive that we just focused on little different states. We didn't even really try to hit up the Florida auctions.
Yeah, and by the way, it is 18% annually for 2 years, but it accrues at 1.5% per month roughly. That's if you're earning that maximum rate of return. Okay, so if you're earning the full 18%, then it's going to accrue at like a rate of 1.5% per month. So the longer it takes for somebody to pay off their delinquent taxes, the more expensive it gets for them. And yeah, here's another example to show you here on this Broward County record. When we click on the record, it pulls up this information right here, that tells us the face amount. In fact, I can probably even enlarge this a little bit. Face amount of this lien is $21,000. We can see the year here on it for 2019.
Well, we can also click on any of the links to look at the GSI map, the Google map, the tax record.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that's so nice about Florida is a lot of their records are connected to each other. And so you can click on one record. In fact, sometimes you can see the sales information, click on the sales information, and pull up the deed that easily.
Yeah, we can see here in this bottom window, they've actually got one that says, they have prior year certificates issued, prior outstanding redeemed. So you could actually see just from this initial link, whether there are, what the roll-up is on the property.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at a $20,000 tax lien on a property that's worth just under $1 million.
And I think it's probably just a piece of land, maybe. Oh no, it's a house. It's this house.
Nice home.
Yeah, very nice $1 million house. Plus, it's on the water, and so yeah.
And if you're into real estate, well, that's okay too, because Florida has the tax deed auctions where all of these liens that are getting purchased, when they come to the end of the redemption period, they get the deed application, then it goes to the auction. You can buy properties, you know, just like we did the examples that we showed earlier.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you guys can do here before we go, of course, is if some of you are interested in well, if you're not members yet, you can sign up for the membership program for just $39 a month.
Yeah,
that
really,
was a no-brainer.
Yeah, really, our membership program is, you know, the very best value for the money. We believe it, and we're willing to take a challenge on it with what's provided. You know, that's going to give you access to all of the auction lists. That's going to give you access to all of our training guides, our books, but also weekly webinars, just like the one that we're doing tonight, but on more specific topics where we get into, you know, due diligence and all of these different things that we can't go over in just an hour's time.
Yeah, the membership program is the bargain of the century there. And for those that are looking for more than that, we do have a mentoring program that's pretty small. It's a small program, but we do have people that have been graduating the program, and we've had tremendous success with it. It's been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, to be considered to the coaching program, you need to be part of the membership program to begin with. We want you to get your feet wet, start understanding the systems, and then, you know, if working with us one-on-one. And then we also, you know, we usually have 3 days. We're waiting for, you know, everything to be cleared so that we can go ahead and schedule a 3-day. And one thing as well to kind of quickly talk about is we're looking at putting on a 1-day online boot camp where, you know, essentially we're taking kind of the information that we teach at our 3-day and putting it in a 1-day online boot camp format, so that, you know, you could watch it from your home. And with the coronavirus and everything, you know, that may be a good opportunity for some additional training.
Oh yeah, and by the way, Felicia, we'll definitely, we're going to have this webinar, the recording of this out for everybody. Replays, you know, we'll get it out to everybody. They're always recorded, so we always get our replays out, so that if you can't make it in person, you can catch it later.
Yeah, we'll have it on our YouTube channel. We'll also be sending it out, the replay on all of our email lists. So if you're on any of our lists or YouTube channel, you should have access to it here this evening.
Yeah. So hey, again, thanks for spending you know, this entire hour here with us. It's been fun. I think I love looking at liens like this. We've had a lot of great questions, a really engaged group. So thanks for making it a good session.
Yep, appreciate it.